Welcome, Christian Warriors. My name is Keith. We're going to talk about the Charlie Kirk shooting, which I have no doubt all of you have heard about. And we're going to talk about lessons that we can learn from that incident and how we can better protect our pastors and other church staff when they go out and speak in public, because we know that they often do events just like Charlie was doing in Utah. Now, just so everybody's on the same page, Charlie Kirk is a conservative commentator. He is a good Christian that has been going around the country doing a university tour where he debates people and he does a really good job at it. And a lot of times the questions center around Christianity, and he does a pretty good job of explaining Scripture to people that don't quite understand. And I've been watching him as he does this because I enjoy the debates. I learn a lot from him. He is a great debater. And I've watched that he has security nearby when he goes and speaks, because I was worried about him when he was going around. I thought to myself, because I often think about these things, well, what would happen if somebody attacked Charlie? And I saw that he had really good security, but he got shot. I'm doing this just a few hours after watching everything come out about this. I've watched all the gory videos of what happened. And I can't show on YouTube what really happened today, but if you go to christianwarriortraining.com, I have all the videos up there, and I'm not putting the videos up there of him getting shot and just the graphic detail of what happened to him. You can't watch that with a weak stomach, and you'll get angry watching it. But I don't put it up there to sensationalize it. I'm putting it up there because you have to watch this to learn how you can better protect your person that you're protecting when they go out and speak in public. Because Charlie had a lot of backing that he was able to have a professional security team, which he still got shot. President Trump got shot, even though he had the Secret Service guarding him. And I've got a whole bunch of other things that bother me about that day, which I may or may not talk about in this video. But I want you to look at these incidents and take away, what can I do to better protect my pastor? Because a lot of you think you can just have a guy with no training, no planning, no forethought, and protect your pastor when he goes out in public. And I want to make sure that, look, we're not going to stand out there with an AR-15 and do this show of force. You can't do that. Your pastor has to go out and talk normally, and you have to be hidden, almost like nobody sees you. Now, Charlie's security detail, when he's been out speaking, I can pick them out because I can see them printing. I can see indicators that they're armed. I can see the way that they're handling themselves, that they are obviously there to protect Charlie. I want you to be just as invisible. So we're going to talk about what you can do to protect your pastor in case something like this happens and to prevent it all around. Now, look, we have to understand. A lot of people say, well, how are you connecting Charlie Kirk to pastors around America? Well, again, just to reiterate, Charlie does talk about Christian issues, and he does talk about the Bible and Christ's message, and he does a good job of spreading the gospel when he's at these events.
You're taking the Bible as a fact book, which really doesn't make sense because it has like not a million, but like a lot of different authors. And also there's 4 birth stories.
No, one author. God is the author, but a lot of people transcribe.
Okay, but if God is not the author, certain people wrote the Bible. They
transcribed it, for sure.
From what?
Well, Moses heard from God, and he transcribed Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy.
But Moses wasn't alive when all of these other people were writing the same book.
Okay, right. So what you're talking about is...
And you have to understand that we have a hostile climate in the United States right now, and there are people that hate you and your pastor because of what you believe in. Not only that, the Bible tells us that we're going to be persecuted because we follow Jesus. It spells it out very clearly. And that means that people are going to try and come get you. And your job is to stop that. And people have come out and said, especially after this recent shooting at the Catholic school in Minnesota, where people have come out and said that it's time that active shooters start targeting Christians and stop targeting everybody else. It's very much normalizing violence against Christians. And so the first thing you need to do is understand that people will come attack you because of your belief. Now, the first thing is you're going to do, if you have an event like what Charlie Kirk is doing, and is to do what's called a red team advance. Now, a red team advance, or just an advance, is to go to where your person is going to go speak. So let's use Charlie Kirk's presentation as an example. He went to a university in Utah, and you know where he's going to speak. And so you go there weeks ahead of time and you look at it and you stand where your pastor is going to speak or where Charlie spoke. And you're going to start visualizing, if I'm a bad person, how am I going to attack my pastor? You're going to look at places you would attack from people rushing on stage to try and attack them for what they're saying, to somebody taking a shot, close range, medium range, long range. Let's go back to President Trump's presentation in Butler, Pennsylvania. Just so you guys know, I was a cop for 30 years. I was on SWAT for 20. I have been part of details, much like the event in Butler, Pennsylvania, where I've been on a SWAT team and my job was to secure areas and to deny access to bad actors. So here you can sit there and look and go, there would be a guy that would be on that flat roof over there. So we're going to put a team on that roof so that they basically have to fight the SWAT team that's on that roof to take up a position to finally shoot the president or the dignitary or whoever's there. That person won't be there anymore because you will be busy to being in a gunfight with that person, and that protectee was able to get away. So I want you to go do an advance and look at how that's going to happen. Now, you're not going to be lucky enough to have a security team like Charlie Kirk or to have the Secret Service like President Trump. So you're going to have to figure out how you can make do with the people that you have. You're going to have to identify high ground or windows that overlook the event. And you're going to have to figure out how to best protect your dignitary from those threats. You're going to have to check parking structures, rooftops, and accessible buildings. You're going to have to look at establishing a perimeter that's going to keep the public at safe distances. And we can see that when Charlie shows up at a university, they do a good job. They have fencing around Charlie so that he can go ahead and talk. And basically these fences prohibit stage runners from, jumping up, or if they do try to scale the fence to come at Charlie, his security team can pull him away. And we'll talk more about that security team responsibility in a minute, but they would be able to pull him away and get him into a vehicle and leave. You want to look at how you're going to position security so that threats can be detected and stopped before there is a shot fired. You're also going to have to look at it this way. If there are shots fired, and my dignitary, my pastor, your protectee, whoever you're there with, if they do get shot, how am I going to get them out, right? Where do I place a rescue vehicle close by that I can throw them in that vehicle? What's got to be in that vehicle? If I'm worried about gunshot wounds or stab wounds, like what equipment do I have there in the vehicle ready to go to run away? And we can see in this video when Charlie was shot, and again, I can't show the whole video because of YouTube's suppression of free speech. If you go to christianwarriortraining.com, I have all these videos, all the full videos, so you can look at them and learn from that. You can see that right behind a wall where Charlie was speaking, there was a minivan. And I have no doubt that was probably a rescue vehicle or a support vehicle in some way. And you can throw them in that vehicle and you can go to the hospital. And you're going to have to make a decision in that red teaming. You're going to have to look at it this way. How long would it take for an ambulance to get to my dignitary if they're shot? Now, remember, if they get shot, people are going to be running in every direction. And you have to look at that and say, are people going to be in my way? So what route am I going to take to get away from people and to get them to the hospital? What route do I take to the trauma center? And you have to look at that trauma center. Not every hospital will take a gunshot wound. And when you look, Charlie got shot in the neck. And again, you can look at the video and you can see how much blood he lost right initially. It was so huge. You can look at that and go, all right, if I have this major catastrophic gunshot wound, where am I going to go? What's the route that I'm going to take? And then you're going to drive that route during the hours that your person is speaking to know what traffic looks like to find the best route. And then you're going to pre-plot that and you're going to figure all that out, right? And you're going to figure out, what does that rescue vehicle need? Do I need long guns in there just in case? What kind of trauma kit do I have? Do I have a person trained in trauma care there? And we'll go more into that in a minute. But what do I need? And you start figuring out from there. But let's talk about the protective team, okay? Because you got to have a protective team in place to protect your person, but it's more than just having some armed bystanders there, right? A lot of you people think because some dude has a CCW that they're somehow qualified to protect your pastor. It doesn't work that way, okay? Just because a person has a CCW doesn't make them qualified to be on that protective team, okay? Just to be clear. And that's not a plan. That's hope, and hope isn't a plan. So you want to pick some really good people that have discipline and clearly defined roles. Now, the first responsibility is prevention of that team, which is that red teaming that we just talked about, doing that advance. But if your planning fails and an attacker appears, you want your team to be in a position that they can stop and quickly and decisively stop that attacker, preferably before your principal or the person you're protecting is struck. Now, that protective coverage also has to address other likely threats, like protesters attempting to disrupt an event. Individuals are going to try to rush the stage. You're going to have to, and of course, the active shooter, somebody shooting, something like that. Now, your security team members should be trained not only to use force, but also to use physical control techniques, crowd management, and most importantly, rapid decision-making under stress. Now, that's going to rule out a lot of your security team. Basically, your best people are going to be on that initial dignitary protection detail. And you should be out training constantly. You should pick your dignitary protection team, and then they should go out monthly and train just on that. They should train on what happens if somebody rushes the stage, what happens if there's shots fired. You don't have to have your actual dignitary there for this training, but somebody acting in the role of the dignitary of actually picking them up and throwing them in the vehicle and rushing them away and what that looks like. What does your vehicle motorcade look like as you're leaving? What does your force protection posture look like as you're racing from the scene? Now that team, that dignitary protection team, has to be unified in its mission. Protect the pastor or that leader without creating unnecessary alarm for the congregation or the audience. So this balance comes from rehearsals and training that prepare them to move as a cohesive unit. Now, effective protection means anticipating the threat, intervening before it escalates, and keeping that focus on the ministry taking place. All right, so here Charlie got shot. What happens if your person gets shot? Charlie getting shot shows how important it is to have your team train in trauma care. Getting shot in the carotid artery is a survivable wound. People get shot in the carotid artery and still live. Charlie got hit hard, and you can see his team. I won't be able to show the whole thing, but when his team gets on him very quickly and they start applying pressure, you're going to have to stop that bleeding immediately. And then you're going to have to decide, do I scoop and run, meaning scoop them up, throw them in the vehicle and get to the hospital, or do I wait for an ambulance? You're going to have to make that decision on the fly. I can tell you here in this type of situation, waiting for an ambulance probably isn't an option because everybody's running in every direction, and the ambulances are going to have to go through those flow of people to get to your dignitary. It's probably best just to throw them in the vehicle and get going because you pre-planned that route to the hospital already, right? In your red teaming advance, you've already tried to figure out what the best route is. But your team needs to understand how to do that immediate trauma control and then to pick them up and move, and then you have to have somebody with a higher level of training and trauma, more than just the first responder, but like a trauma nurse, a trauma surgeon, somebody that is there in case your person gets shot so that they can save their life. As an example for my SWAT team, when we moved out, we had two surgeons. We had a vascular surgeon and we had an orthopedic surgeon, and they have had all sorts of trauma training and experience throughout their long careers. They were much older men with tons of experience, and they got to use their skills when they were with us on our SWAT team. And the whole goal was if we got shot, our chances of surviving were a little bit more. So if you have somebody like that in your congregation that can help, then bring them on. And they're the last resort if something bad were to happen. And you want to plan for that extraction. You have to move your dignitary out of where you're at. What does that look like? When you're on stage, I want you to be you're going to be there, but people aren't going to realize you're there for dignitary protection. But when it comes time that you've got to move them, what does that look like? You pick them up, get that extraction vehicle. It has to be close by, like we're talking like steps away. So you can throw them in there. And then what do you have in that extraction vehicle? What I recommend you have is you do have, more protective equipment from rifles to trauma kits to just whatever that you might need to help get through roadblocks, to help get past. You might have to have like a pepper ball gun or a beanbag gun or something like that to keep people away from your protectee. It may not just be lethal that you have to worry about. You might have to get through, like giving example, you might have to go through caltrops or something else. You might have to have run flat tires or run with tires that have been blown out because you just have to get out of the area. You want to figure out how you're going to do that and have that extraction vehicle and that extraction of your dignitary ready to go. Okay, let's talk about custody of the suspect, because you might be part of a security team and something bad happens to your pastor, like just what happened to Charlie Kirk, and you just happen to be nearby and you take the suspect into custody. Now, in this video, I can't show this one on YouTube. We don't know if this is a suspect or not. We know he was arrested by police or detained by police, at least. I would suspect that he was arrested because they're moving him and there's strict case law about officers moving people in handcuffs. But here you can hear the crowd is getting agitated by his presence and they're upset about this suspect. So this is a message to the officers that are watching. If you arrest somebody that may be the suspect in a case like this, you don't want to move them through an angry crowd. You're going to have to lock that person down, do crowd control, keep people away, get a patrol car up there, throw them in the patrol car, and go drive them away. You can secure them in a room and then harden that room up and then wait for more people to come to move them out. But you have to have a plan. Now, you on a security team, you've taken this guy into custody because he shot your pastor or whatever. You've got to do something with him. You probably can't stay there because the crowd is going to pounce on that guy. And it doesn't apply to our Christian values to let people start attacking this man. We have a duty to protect him. The Bible is very clear about what our duty is. And so you're going to have to move him. Are you going to put him into a vehicle and go drive him away? Or are you going to call for police and tell him you need somebody right now? And then tell the officer, get a patrol car up here so we can put him in and get him out of here. But really, my messaging here is for law enforcement. Again, I hope you respect my experience, 20 years on SWAT, 30 years as a cop. I was a sergeant. You got to get a patrol car up there and throw them in. Don't walk them through the angry crowd. That's the biggest mistake. But just know that even church security, if you take somebody into custody, you own that person. If something bad happens to them, then it's on you and the church. So start thinking about what you're going to do about protecting that person and throw it into your scenarios about what you're going to do and how you're going to react to that. Now look, at Christian Warrior Training, everything that we do is based on the Bible and also, good tactics and, things that we just talked about. But the Bible is the basis for everything that we do here. And so I like talking about what Scripture says about what we're doing. And I think here, Ezekiel 33, Verse 6 is a great place to start. And that talks about the role of a watchman, which is what you are. Now, the Lord warns that if a watchman sees danger coming and doesn't sound the alarm, the blood of those harmed is on his hands. So the principle applies directly to church security. If we recognize the threats facing our pastors and we fail to act, we're neglecting the responsibility God has placed upon us. Another good one is Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 17 and 18. And this is where Nehemiah is organizing the rebuilding of Jerusalem walls with both builders and guards working side by side and swords in their hand. Now, for my fellow combat engineers in the Marine Corps and the Army, we know that when we went out and worked, we had a shovel in one hand and an M16, M4, whatever period you were in the other hand. Now, their vigilance followed the work of God to continue despite constant threats. Now, likewise, our calling is to ensure that the ministry of the church can move forward without being paralyzed in fear. Another good one, Luke 22:36. We talk about that often on this channel, and Jesus himself recognized the need for preparation and protection when he told his disciples in Luke 22:36 that those without a sword should sell their cloak and buy one. A modern interpretation could be sell your jacket that you spent a bunch of money on and go buy a Glock. This wasn't a call to aggression, but a recognition that the world is a hostile place and that its followers are going to face real danger, which we saw today. Now, for church security teams, the message is clear. We're watchmen. Our duty is to protect the flock, to guard the shepherd, and to ensure that the gospel is proclaimed without hindrance. Now, failure to act faithfully in this role carries both spiritually and earthly consequences. Now, by taking security seriously, we not only honor our leaders, but also fulfill our responsibility God has given us as protectors of his people. Lessons for our church security teams. Number one, recognize that leaders can be targeted for their faith and their message. We want you to conduct thorough advances and red team assessments before events occur. This is going to happen weeks ahead of time. We want you to train in protective principles, trauma medicine, and crowd management. We want you to stage extraction vehicles and plan routes to trauma centers. And lastly, we want you to maintain custody of suspects safely until law enforcement assumes control. Now, when we leave here, what I would like you to do is to pray for Charlie, pray for his family, pray for all the people that had to watch what happened at this university in Utah. And the hardest part out of all of this, I want you to pray for the suspect. I want you to pray that he repents for his sins and that he turns to Christ and decides to follow the Lord. That is going to be the hardest part for you. The other thing I want you to remember when you leave here is to remember your ABCs. Always be caring.